Oh, I need the clicker. Clicker's up here. Okay, everyone. So my name's Eric Ackerman. I'm the VP of Commercial Technology at Perry Ellis. So we're the clothing company. We have many, many, many brands. And I'm almost positive that you have purchased one of our brands somewhere. And we are trying to figure out the metaverse, okay? And I spent many years trying to learn about the metaverse. And so this slide deck that I'm going to give you guys, and this is the very modified slide deck. I've done many keynote presentations for pretty large apparel manufacturers and different conventions. And so this is the real scaled down slide deck. And I'll be more than glad if you connect on me with LinkedIn, I can share you a bigger slide deck. So ultimately, I start off by trying to explain to everyone, where are we with the metaverse, right? And the great and graphic artists at Perry Ellis even gave me hair. So you see there, isn't that great? Too much work to maintain. So I told them, even if I could have hair again, I don't want it. Too much work. The amount of money I've saved in not having to get haircuts, I use for technology, right? So anyway, but what this tries to explain is that where the dinosaurs are, there was a lot of shit that happened before the dinosaurs, right? Just in the really early stages of the metaverse, right? 100 years from now, it's going to be totally different, right? So the first question usually people ask is, who came up with this word metaverse? So Neil Stephenson, and he used to be a colleague of mine when I worked at Magic Leap, okay? And I was at Magic Leap from 2013 to 2020, a long time ago. And we were initially inventing what we call the Magicverse, right, which is today somewhat the metaverse. And he came up with that word, basically the combination between like the real world and this, futuristic world in his book, Snow Crash. So I usually start talking about what is the metaverse, right? Because this is the big group, and this is the same, within a couple of months of me being hired at Perry Ellis, I made this deck to all of our senior leadership to try to understand what is it, right? And this is fluid, right? So it's still evolving, it's still changing, and everything that I'm telling you right now will probably be crap in like 5 years from now, right? Because it's going to change again, right? So, but ultimately, you guys can read this. Obviously, the next generation of the internet, a Web3, a virtual world, it will disrupt every sector of our lives, right? When Amazon is completely in the metaverse, it's going to change drastically how things are done, right? Users are already engaging in it through video games, through different experiences, smart devices, shopping, you name it. But ultimately, every brand is going to have to invest, okay? In the early 90s, I started a little internet company called Margate Internet Services, which was in Margate, Florida, not far from where I lived. And one of the things we did was we were creating web pages for businesses in 1994, right? So in 1994, you go to a business and you say to them, you need a web page. And they're like, what is a web page? Why do we need a web page? Right? So Marooney, which became, right, we actually started to sell them web pages. And we were charging them $99 a web page. We were really stupid because they used to take out in the Sun Sentinel and Miami Herald, the magazines, 12 pages of ads of cars. And the people that were doing newspapers were charging like $50,000 every Sunday for their ads. We were charging $99 for a web page, right? We should have known better. But anyway, ultimately, everyone's going to use it. So then the next question people always ask is, what generation is going to use this, right? And you can see already 52% of the population are millennials, right? 82 to 1999, and then Generation Z. Both of my sons, a 21 and 23-year-old, they're in Generation Z, right? And when all of us go to restaurants today, you see children on iPads. I used to have a coloring book, maybe Etch-a-Sketch. Today, you pacify the kids, you give them a freaking iPad, right? So they're used to using their figures, interfacing in a virtual world, you name it. This is the group. So the 168 million people, average age of 18, that's the group, right? So usually in my bigger crowds, I would say, okay, do we have any greatest generation people? And you'd get one or two of those people, right? That's not the group. Not the silent, not the baby boomers, maybe a little Gen X, but mostly millennials and Gen Z, right? That's the target. Because they're already spending 80% of their time on mobile devices. I can look around and I can find anyone who's one of those groups because they can't be separated. So this is sort of the marketplace, and this is not perfectly because obviously things have changed, but there's a lot of devices in the marketplace. So ultimately, organizations need to figure out what are you going to do? Right? Mixed reality, augmented reality, virtual reality. It's all very confusing, right? And each one of them has a price point to have a point of entry. So it's easier for a lot of organizations to just simply wait and wait to see who's going to emerge, what's going to do it, right? So like any technology curve, there's bleeding edge, right? Cutting edge, and then like mass adoption, and then late adoption, right? So the late adoption are the companies that are like, 3 years ago just created a website for you to order online. That's late adoption, right? But the really, really, really early ones, right, when people didn't understand what to do. Okay, that's me wearing our ML1 when we released it on release day, and obviously today they're selling ML2s. But once again, these are just some other little models of where the glass is and where things are going to go to. So the other big issue that we're dealing with is standards, right? So it wasn't long ago that the Metaverse standards group got formed in 2022 to basically figure out with all these devices out there, right, how are they all going to communicate with each other? And even if they don't communicate with each other, how are they going to follow standards so developers and people in organizations can start building with this? So the Metaverse Standards Forum was created. It basically focuses, you can read this, on a CPU, optimization, AI, XR, networking, and there's all these different groups. So how many people are familiar with like IEEE, Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers? Everyone in this room should be familiar with IEEE. If you're not, you need to get familiar with IEEE, okay? I was a vice president in IEEE USA, and I'm still in executive leadership in IEEE. And IEEE sets all the standards for basically everything you're doing in computing in the world is IEEE standards. So everyone in here is USB-C or USB connectors, that's all IEEE standards, right? Everything in computing is IEEE. And IEEE is a member of this committee, which is helping saying the standards of why things will work with each other, which ultimately benefits all of us, right? So in the early days of photography, digital photography, I was a Sony guy because Nikon wasn't out yet, right? My first Nikon is a D100. But I was a Sony guy, right? And I loved my Sony products. The things I hated, every time I bought a new Sony product, it had a new set of standards. Different battery, different connectors, different memory card. They were amazing at that, and that drove their business. So I still have all my digital devices. I save everything. I collect. I have a computer museum of 1,000 computers. I have arcade machines. I got all this shit. And I go to my Sony drawer, and I got like 12 different power adapters, 12 different sets of batteries, nothing compatible. Right? That's how they rolled. So anyway, so you can see all the different things with the standards, right? And there's over 2,400 members as part of the standards body. All the companies that are here are in the Metaverse Standards Forum, and you can just go on the website and you can start learning about what is happening in each of these standards. So I would say before you spend a lot of money developing any application or doing anything, you need to really look at what are the standards, and are whatever platform I'm buying into, are they following those standards? Or are you going to be left high and dry a year from now? And let me tell you something, if you're an IT person and you're making investments, you don't want to be a year from now that next year it's end of life, because they've moved on. But you've just spent all this money. Well, what about this thing I just did? Well, I don't know. Okay, so we got into dealing with the metaverse because there's many brands that were starting to experiment in the metaverse, right? And we were pretty early on. So, so one of the brands is in Fortnite, right? So how a lot of the brands are trying to connect to younger audiences, because that's my goal. My goal is that the generation that is younger today finds Original Penguin, that's one of our brands, Perry Ellis, Ben Hogan, Sylvain, Nike swimwear, PGA Tour, like all these different brands that we work with, they somehow get connected with them. When they're spending an enormous amount of time in games, which are mini metaverses, right? They're their own worlds. Then you got to say to yourself, how do I get to those people? Because remember, they're not watching regular TV. The younger people, they don't get content on a broadcast schedule. They get content on demand. So I predict within 20 years, there will be no more broadcast TV other than for news. No programming will be at 8 p.m. at night or 7 p.m. So it's so funny. I sit with my wife, and we're about the same age. We're 1970 babies. So I'm 53, right? And so, you know, on AMC, right, 10 Commandments comes on, right? Or The Shining, or some great show. And I'm sitting there, and I'm watching. And then my kids are like, you know, Dad, you can watch that whenever you want. You can just stream it. And I'm like, it's not as good. Like, it's on TV right now, right? So I'll find channels of shows I want to watch. I'm old school. Young people, they don't watch it like that. So once again, you got to go to them. So and Ralph Lauren was obviously in there too, with 3D avatars and stuff like that. So what we ended up doing was we started to go into the Metaverse Fashion Week in Decentraland, okay? And Decentraland is one of the open Metaverse platforms that you can access through a phone or through a computer. We have chosen, even though I have extensive experience in spatial computing, tons of experience in XR, at this point, I'm not buying into any particular platform. I have platforms to experiment with, but I am nowhere saying, you know what, we're going to do a huge campaign, we're going to do something huge in that. Because you know why? It's going to fail miserably. And when it fails miserably, and that's the truth, then when I ask again for something, the leadership's going to say, whoa, we spent all this money on this, and we had 1,000 people that saw it, right? We can buy an ad on TV, or we can do something, and we'll get 2.5 million people. Where's this going, right? So you got to know when to bring a product based on its maturity cycle forward. And part of your role, if you're in any type of role where you're managing technology, is you got to make sure you don't overhype it and oversell it, and then it underdelivers. Because then it's your credibility that becomes questioned. So I always want to make sure that I'm confident with what we can deliver based on the price point. We were able to do everything that I'm going to show you some pictures in here for under $10,000. So working in Decentraland, price point wise, phenomenal. It's not even one photo shoot with a professional model to do something, I was able to do an event, right? And ultimately what we ended up doing was creating a store in Decentraland in the fashion things, and that's some of the characters in there, right? Some people and characters. And we had a store, and we minted NFTs, right? So we minted 1,000 NFTs, right? That you could create a digital garment or a digital garment, one of our garments, right? These are one of the different garments, right? And these were just ones that we were picking based on real models. So we had a digital twin, okay, of these garments. And we did 1,000 of each. And they even had a little runway show where you could watch it and see people modeling and other types of things. And they all sold out within 1 minute. So once again, being clever, you only want to emphasize good things when you write your memos and your reports, right? So what did I emphasize? We did this, it was an experiment, and the amount of enthusiasm was so great that we sold out on all of our NFTs within 60 seconds. Now the leadership is like, holy shit, 60 seconds? Well, what do we charge for those NFTs? Well, we didn't charge anything, right? But maybe the next time, and we're working right now with a very big company that you all have shopped with, that delivers all around the country, that their next iteration of NFTs, right, will have a dollar amount. Now, I'm not saying if we would have charged $5 or $10 for each of these NFTs, we probably would have sold none. None. But the excitement of, hey, this worked, that's good, right? So it's baby steps, right? You got to do baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. So once that ran, that's my last slide. So once that ran, and these were, pretty successful in buying in our little store, go back to our store, right? Then each iteration of it, right? So that was 2023, we'll be in 2024s, we were in 2022s, right? And each time it's getting a little bit bigger, a little bit better, right? And they had about 150,000 people go on to Decentraland. And one reason why they had high volumes is that it's accessible for free through a computer. Because the computer still is the primary portal to get to your customers for the metaverse. You could easily, there's not enough headsets to drive any type of numbers for a particular event. It's not there yet, right? Maybe if Taylor Swift, so if one of the groups signs a deal with Taylor Swift, okay, and Meta signs, Taylor Swift is going to have a concert, they're going to sell a crap load of headsets. And then as soon as the concert's over, everyone's going to want to return them, right? And then we can buy them secondhand, right? So you think about Apple, obviously experimenting right now in this space. So they're going to figure out where do we need to go and what do we need to do. So anyway, okay, that was my quick time. I think I have a couple of minutes left for questions, right?
We actually have to take questions outside.
There you go. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.